Thompson.
Kia ora, welcome to Property Matters. Our team are on a quick break this week, but don't panic, we've taken some of our best bits from some of our episodes this year for you to enjoy. Welcome to Property Matters.
Property Matters.
Kia ora and welcome to Property Matters. I'm Stephen Dello. Great to have you here on Planet FM 104.6, and of course you can listen to any of our previous podcasts on Spotify, Apple, Samsung Podcasts, iHeartRadio, or wherever you love to listen to them. I'm sure we're there. This week, our team are taking a well-earned break, and we thought we'd bring you some of our favourite interviews so far this year.
Where would you like it to go? Put your leadership hat on. You're currently a team of one in this. So I can't ask you questions about how you lead your team, although, I guess if things get tough, the bottle gets opened a little bit earlier in the afternoon. But where would you like to go growth and expansion-wise?
Well, Boutique Connection, taking this over was actually more of a stepping stone to my ultimate dream, which is I'd really like to start an urban winery in Auckland and showcase as a collective rather than just one brand. It's more of a collective space for lots of boutique producers to come and use, either for them to meet clients or to showcase their wines and do little events. But I'd like to bring the magic of winemaking to the people. So that, in my mind, would envisage some foot stomping, some small batch winemaking, showing people how barrels are made, glassware, maybe even get into the sort of more sciencey, nerdy part of the lab.
Because there is so much science to wine. I mean, you said at the start, a 3-year degree. Mm-hmm. This is not something you just go and read a book, go out and make some wine.
No, a Bachelor of Wine Science.
Bachelor of Wine Science.
Who
there we
knew?
go. Yeah. and you enjoy that scientific bit.
I really do. I'm one of those people who I keep asking why. Why? I'm the annoying kid. Why? And I love to know how things, especially the biochemistry in our bodies in particular, is what I'm really interested in. And I think that science is one of those things where everyone can love it in some way. You can be really nerdy about the equations, the physics, or even just biology, just the theories and the ideas. So I think sharing the love of fermentation you can really talk about sauerkraut, you can talk about anything really. And it's this magic that we've only really just discovered in the last 200 years. So let's share it with everyone.
Do you see the wine industry in New Zealand changing much at the moment?
There's a lot of discussion about the industry is facing this struggle where people at the other end of life, they've lived a good life and they've had to stop drinking. So that group of people aren't drinking so much. But then also the next generation aren't drinking so much at all. And if they are drinking, it tends to be RTDs.
I was going to say, I have 2 daughters, and the younger generation definitely has a wider scope of what they can buy. I mean, there's your craft beers, your RTDs, but they're also big on cocktails. Yeah. I mean, growing up could never afford a cocktail. But these days, of course, your teenagers all have jobs and your young 20s have jobs that are earning money. So that's a shift. Yeah. But it's also about, I like the fact that you're selling the story and the brand, and a lot of young people are really hot on that, about understanding the story behind something. So maybe that's in your future marketing.
I think so. Yeah, definitely. Telling the story is what people are being sold on at the moment, and putting the human face behind wine. There's enough photos of people holding a bunch of grapes, or hands, or vines in the distance with the sun setting. We've got enough of those photos. We need the real gritty human side to winemaking, which is what I really would love to do with that urban winery. And interestingly though, I've done a lot of philosophizing about why is it that young people aren't really turning to wine and it seems to be dropping. It used to have a consistent level in the mid-20s to sort of rise a little bit. Not that I want to promote drinking so much, but what I'm really passionate about is how do we engage people with what they're putting in their body? Because a lot of those RTDs they're made out of milk, whey, spirit. It's not necessarily vegan. They don't have to really say that it's milk, whey, spirit, but they just mix it with all sorts of flavors, So people aren't really...
more sugar. Yeah.
They're not... Young people think that they're putting something good into their body, but they're not really understanding what it is. And people often want to disengage when they drink. It's not actually about engaging. So there should... it's more about why people are drinking and how they're drinking, and how do we engage them in what they're tasting and smelling.
And supporting.
Yes.
Boutique and local, not the big guys all the time. You're probably far too young to remember, but, the old Miami wine cooler days. I mean, that was my teenage intro into wine, was definitely the couple of bottles, I think they were little bottles, not cans originally, of good old Miami wine cooler. Kicked it off.
Heard all about these. I haven't tried one.
They were great. They were really fruity, what it did is sort of, I guess at a young age, had you drinking white wine.
Exactly,
and then suddenly you were of an age of, I want to step up to the real stuff. It was interesting. Here's the ultimate question. What is your favourite type of wine? Not brand, but type of wine. Ooh. If we went into your house tonight, you're cooking dinner. I know you're going to say it depends what I'm cooking. But what would be the first thing you would grab?
That is so hard because I'm one of those people who I drink to the occasion. So if it's breakfast, I will have some champagne.
Right.
But, you can't go wrong with champagne. You really, really can't. So if you're coming to my house, Stephen, for dinner,
Yep.
champagne will just disappear.
Brilliant.
But I love a good Syrah. That's one of those wines that makes me stop and think.
Yeah. No, I'd agree there. I'd go with both of those. Champagne early in the day, Syrah later. Talking about your packages now, people can jump on your website and see sort of the variety. You've added flowers into the mix.
Yes. So this is a new thing.
Yeah.
I have this amazing local floral florist, I guess, up the road from where I operate out of in Aoraki. And she is growing her own flowers. She's really passionate about composting and sustainability. And she's very talented. She's Japanese. And I just got to talking to her one day, and I found that 4 hours later, I was still talking to her. And we decided, hey, why don't we give this a shot and do a little bit of a floral and wine subscription. So it's a great gift for Mother's Day, for instance. So you're supporting a local grower and also boutique local wines. It's just this match made in heaven, really.
That is so cool. I love it. And everyone likes getting flowers. Why not get them delivered to yourself once a month?
Exactly.
That is, very cool. And also, you've got non-alcoholic wines.
Yeah, so I was speaking to the local district about, we are selling boutique wine made by small producers, and none of them produce zero alcohol wine because it's such an expensive process, and most of these zero alcohol wines are produced by large producers. But my partner doesn't drink. And so I'm conflicted because I want to support small, but I think starting with what's available and putting that out there and then growing that market, and eventually we will be able to come up with a solution for boutique producers to make boutique zero alcohol wine as well. That's the plan. Because I really want to support that movement. I think there's room for improvement. Some of the best zero alcohol wines are whites. I haven't come across a nice red yet. But it's only through supply and demand that we...
Yeah, that people will experiment more and
Yeah.
go, hang on, we need to hit this market. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
What do you love most about your job?
Meeting
Yeah.
people. I just love to get a little bit nerdy with other people, and because I actually love to live vicariously through other people. And wine is just that beautiful lubricant, that social lubricant, that you'll start chatting about something that you love and suddenly I'm off, on stage being in theatre for a moment.
Brilliant.
But it's the people.
That is so cool. Now, I told you at the start of this before we went on air, I said 40 minutes is going to go really fast. It has. And
No way.
And I feel like we could talk for ages. There's so much we haven't touched on. Tell people, how can they track down your subscription site, but also your own personal wines? Where do people head?
Definitely go to Google, our old friend Google, and type in boutique wine subscription, New Zealand probably. And you'll be able to find www.boutiqueconnection.co.nz, and there'll be a lot of stories of some of our producers, not all of them because there's quite a few to get through, and hopefully on Instagram as well, if you're on Instagram, at Boutique Connection. You'll be able to follow along and watch my dad and I, who's a photographer, take photos of all these producers as we slowly get our way through them.
Because Dad does deliveries too, doesn't he?
He does,
I've
and
met
his
Dad. Yeah.
Lanchophobia.
Brilliant. And your own winery, how do people track this down?
That's moiwines.com. But you can purchase it through Boutique Connection, so you can find it on there as well.
Fantastic. Now, I'm delighted this week to welcome Joseph Hickton from Barfoot and Thompson, Milford, to the show today. Welcome along, Joseph.
Thanks, Stephen. How are you?
I'm good. It's great to have you here. And it's a little bit of a unique story we're going to talk about tonight because you're very young and already you've had quite a career move. So we're going to unpack that over the next 40 minutes or so. Now, you're currently property manager or business development manager for the Milford branch of Barfoot and Thompson, but this is a recent appointment. So I'm keen to unpack your journey so far. Now, before we even talk real estate, take us back. What were you doing before you ventured into real estate?
All right, so the year is 2019. I'm 18 years old and completely delusional with what I'm going to do with my life. I was thinking about going to Australia actually to go to a Bible college, but that changed. I ended up deciding to study real estate here in New Zealand, do an internship with my church while doing part-time work at Michael Hill as a salesperson. So I was extremely unbusy to extremely busy in such a short amount of time. And then COVID happened. And unfortunately, due to my time at Michael Hill, I was not there long enough to retain my job there, so I became jobless. Following that, I picked up a job at Frank's, which is a bar/cafe in Takapuna, and I was a waiter there for 6 months, and then I left that role to work on set for a production, doing a minor stunt work out west. Following that, I decided that stunts is a very difficult career to pursue. It's highly competitive and you have to train all the time.
Let alone highly dangerous, come on.
Yeah,
Sure.
exactly. Yeah, definitely very dangerous. So my friend's father pointed me to a job at selling concrete. So I was doing that for about 2 years. And then I decided it's time for a career change. It's time for me to step into what I studied 2 years ago. So I walked into a branch and I spoke with the manager there, and she said, Joseph, call this number and talk to the person who runs the property management training centre And then a week or two after that, I had an interview, and then I quit my job at the company I was working for, and then I got married, and then after I got married, I stepped into my real estate career at the Property Management Centre, and since then it's just been absolutely a blast.
Wow, what a few years. Throw a wedding in the mix as well. What is it about real estate and property management that appealed to you so much?
Well, ever since I was a young kid, I've always loved people and always had a passion for people and always wanted to help people. So I guess real estate, is a career where you can middleman somebody in the most amazing transaction of their lives. And I guess to be a part of that, plugging in the vendor with the client and negotiating and seeing everybody happy or even cry at the end, in a good way, I mean cry, that is just such an amazing thing to be a part of. Yeah,
it's quite cool. I hadn't thought of that in that way, being the middleman, because you're between owners and tenants or purchasers and the seller and the buyer. You are, real estate is in the middle. That's quite an interesting approach to it. So you mentioned that you joined the Training Academy. Can you tell our listeners what exactly is that?
The Training Academy is your foot in the door into a property management career at Barfoot and Thompson. Now, it's a bit ironic because if you're wanting to be a property manager, you can only become a property manager if you do property management. So then Barfoot and Thompson came up with this genius idea to create a training centre, which is in fact a real life property management simulator which operates as its own branch to give the trainee the most in-depth perspective with all the highs and all the lows of such a amazing career.
Is this a paid position?
It is a paid position. Yes, it is a paid position, and that really helps and supports people that are wanting to, do a job or career and not have to worry about paying money themselves. The company actually will pay you to learn and develop those skills, which is really great.
That's a real investment in a person, isn't it?
Definitely.
So what does a typical day in the Training Academy look like? Take us back a few months. You've rocked on up on a Monday morning. What does that look like?
It looks like different every single day. It can either be very stressful, and you could be having you could be woken up in the night thinking, oh my goodness, have I forgotten to do something about this tenant or that? Or it could be a very relaxing day where you start off and you walk into the office, you check, make sure everybody's paid their rent on time, you check your emails, make sure everything's in line, and then you set up your day, whether that be conducting inspections or setting up viewings. And then you make your way around and you meet new people and say hi, and the goal is, to put the right tenants in the homes that landlords entrust unto you.
Yeah, because you're a young person for a landlord to trust their sort of $1 million plus investment to. So I guess getting that right tenant is a good way to prove yourself. What sort of things do you do as a company and yourself to make sure you've got the right tenant for a property?
Well, we conduct a credit check, which is extremely comprehensive. It's quite detailed in how much it goes into a person's life and their history over, let's say, 5 to 7 years, depending on how active their portfolio has been and depending on age. And doing this gives me an understanding of the tenant. Now, what I will say, here's a really awesome tip and trick. If you are a tenant and you are looking to secure your dream property, a rental reference will get you over the line regardless, because a reference is extremely key and important for helping somebody who's only met you for a glance or only once trust you in such a short amount of time.
And when you say rental reference, you're meaning from like a current landlord?
The best reference is from a current landlord or their property manager. Definitely, those are very important.
Cool. So over the 6 months, what sort of training did you cover in the Training Academy?
I think I went through everything. The only thing that I didn't do in the Training Academy was actually go to a tribunal case. The things that I covered were everything from rental arrears to maintenance to learning all the systems that our company uses to ensure that we run a tight ship that's on schedule, learning everything, how to manage my time, how to book in meetings, what to say yes to, what to say no to.
Do you cover the legal aspects as well?
Definitely. Of course, I cannot give legal advice, but I learnt enough to be able to give an opinion on what tenants and landlords can and can't do.
Nice. Do you think the training academy is a valuable way into the industry, especially for someone at your young age?
Hands down, it is definitely, in my opinion, the best thing that you could do at my young age, but I don't think it's also designed for people that are in their early to late 20s. You can be probably any age, and if you're wanting a step and changing career into a path that is quite fulfilling for those who desire it, I don't think age is a number in this case.
Nice. But you found the process to definitely sort of set you up for success.
Definitely. You're surrounded by really good people there, and all they want to do is see you succeed and grow and become better in your role, and not only that, but a better person too.
Brilliant. So what was your biggest learning curve during your time at the academy? What was something that perhaps surprised you, or a challenge you had to overcome, or something that you go, ooh, I wasn't ready for that?
My whole life I always knew that I had a mouth that needed to be tamed. And
You're very calm here today, Joseph. I would never believe that.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess in that when we're put under stress, our mouth can move in places that we don't realize it moving in. And my most valuable lesson that I was taught at the support centre was refining what I already thought I knew. And that is the way I speak to people, the way I approach things, and to talk to people where they're at. Because in school, all my friends are extremely passionate and loud. So when I communicate, it's going to be extremely passionate and loud. And I guess coming into an environment where you're meeting people so different all across our city, I had to learn that with some people you cannot be super intense and super enthusiastic, because they may not listen or would just want to receive it at such a level. So learning to shut my mouth and just listen and nod my head was the best and biggest lesson that I learned.
Brilliant. So what sort of person do you think makes a good property manager? If someone's listening to this thinking, I'm ready for a career change, do I tick the boxes? What do you reckon makes a good property manager?
The first attribute I believe a great property manager has to have is determination. They also need to be kind. Those can be quite contradictory in a sense, but you need to have a drive to be able to see that the work is done as it is. It's like a flood, it will keep on coming. The work doesn't stop, there's always something to do. And if you say there isn't something to do, no, that is definitely not the case. Have you checked off your rent reviews? All these sorts of things.
Right.
There's always a plug that needs to be filled. So somebody who is kind and determined. I say kind, but also strong at the same time. I feel like you need to have a sense of justice as well, because at the end of the day, as a property manager, I'm not working for the tenant. I'm being employed by the landlord to serve their investment and to manage it in the best way possible for the landlord. So sometimes, unfortunately, we have to be strong because, no, I'm really sorry. You cannot do that to the home.
Yeah. But I'm guessing building a good relationship with the tenant will make your job easier as well.
I can completely testify and agree to that. Building a good relationship with your tenant definitely makes my job a lot easier, because if I don't know the tenant, I may be beating around the bush and quite nervous how to approach. But if I have already established that relationship with the tenant, it's very easy to be frank with them and say, hey, really sorry, but hey, can we please do this next time? Or hey, can we please not pay part payments in a week? Can we please for next week? Could we please try to do it in one? These are just some examples.
Yeah, so what part of property management do you like the most? What's the bit that makes you tick?
I love meeting people, and I love meeting new people, and I love helping people. Regardless of what industry it is, specifically in this industry, there's something really satisfying about helping the landlord, but also the tenant in the case where I can help the tenant. It's extremely rewarding, and there's not many industries that give you the opportunity to do that. Homes are so important to people. Homes are where dreams are created. Homes are where families are created. Homes are where future can be created, and to, I guess, almost hold the puppet strings to that and be able to orchestrate it so that everybody's happy is just, it's really awesome.
So lovely to have you back.
Thank you for having me back. What a treat.
Oh, it's great to have you here. And for our listeners, if they haven't caught up with you before, tell us a little bit about you, your role at realestate.co.nz and what mischief you get up to.
Oh, absolutely. So mischief is a great word for what I get up to. Look, I have the absolute privilege at realestate.co.nz of looking after our marketing and our media teams. And part of that is all this fabulous property data that we have. And what is why I say that's a real privilege is that we've actually been around since 1996. So my joke there, Stephen, which you're welcome to laugh or not at, is that, you know, when Google started in 1998, we had a website for 2 years, but nobody could find it. So, but look, it's been a journey, and so we have some fabulous property data. But what that allows us to do is see trends and see information over quite a long period of time. And we actually are industry owned. So that what that means is the Real Estate Institute of New Zealand and the big 5 real estate agencies across New Zealand, they actually own us to make sure that Kiwis out there, landlords, investors, property owners, that they have a cost-effective place that they can market their properties online, which is set up, as I said, in 1996. But that's sort of the heart behind what we do, is making sure that people who want to market their properties have a place, an awesome place to do so.
You'll laugh. I went to a show on the weekend and there was a couple of young people sitting beside us, and at one point it was set in the 80s, and at one point the actor on the stage dialed up to the internet and did the whole ding and all the noise that it used to make. And I just looked at these young people beside, and they honestly had no idea what was happening. I digress. Interesting though, the way you just mentioned that how your company is owned, is that quite unique, do you think, in a New Zealand business sense, to be actually sort of owned by all the different people collectively feeding in the information?
Yeah, I think from
it's
very cool. Yeah, I think from a New Zealand sense, there's not many businesses, and also globally, we're actually only one of 3 property portals across the globe that is owned by the industry. They used to have that in the Australian market, where the institutes across the different states also owned property portals, but they moved away from that with realestate.com.au and Domain taking the lion's share. But in Sweden is actually the other sort of big property portal that is industry owned. And look, I think that allows that ability for, you know, there to be some control over what happens and how those sort of property portals come to market and what features and benefits and also pricing happens. Yeah,
cool. And how very fair to be owned by all of them. So look, you're very passionate about property and real estate. What is it that you love so much about property?
I am very passionate. That's a great way to position me. Look, what really excites me about property is that I genuinely believe that property ownership should be a right, not a privilege here in New Zealand. And I think that I love to talk about it and give people inspiration and hope and allow them to be able to support their journey with information and data that will help them get to where they need to go. Because, you know, I honestly believe that there's an opportunity for everybody in every market. We just need to search for it. And I love the fact that it is part of our DNA as Kiwis. I mean, I quite often write in our releases and the like saying, you know, Kiwis definitely have a love affair with property, and that hasn't gone. And I think, you know, COVID tells us that. We saw some remarkable increases over that time because, as I said, what do Kiwis love? property and travel. We couldn't travel, so there was a very concentrated love for that property. But I think that we see it as part of our DNA here in New Zealand. And, you know, I can't turn up to a barbecue and somebody goes, "Oh, Vanessa, I wanted to talk to you. Is it a good time to buy?" And I love talking to people, helping people, but underpinning that with the experts and the data to help them to make those decisions, I think is really important as well.
Look, I often joke you're the queen of data, and I've got this vision of you sitting at work and at home with multiple Excel spreadsheets keeping the Microsoft world alive. I could be totally wrong, might just be a vision. But how do you gather all this data for the reports?
Yeah, great question. You're not too far off with that vision there, Stephen. I might have a tiara on my head as well, just look a little bit fancy with my Excels.
For tomorrow, team, if you're listening, yeah.
So there's a few ways in which we collect data. So firstly, we take on listings, so that being houses that are for sale or for rent or farms or commercial properties, either for lease or for sale. So we take those listings from the real estate industry and we pop them onto our website, and that helps us to indicate supply. So that tells us what is available for sale, for lease or for rent at any one given time. Now there's two ways in which we measure supply or stock. So we have the total pool of homes that's available right now in the market, whether that be that they were listed in 2007 or they were listed today. And then the other indicator that we look at is new listings coming onto the market. Now that tells us how busy vendors or investors or property owners are within that given month, and we will often compare it to the year prior. Now what that tells us is how hot the property market is at the moment. And then we temper that with the other side of the lovely economics, graph is demand. So how many people are on the website? What are they doing when they're on the website? So as an example, in COVID, we saw this big rush of people come to the website, but there was only a smaller portion of them that were quite serious. So perhaps it was more of a browsing, what do we do? What's going to happen? I'm talking early COVID here. And then as the market, because I think the predictions from economists in that very early COVID days, so sort of March 2020, was all doom and gloom. Kiwis are going to lose 30% of the value in their houses, right? And we all went, oh my goodness, what is going to happen here? And quite counter to that, the exact opposite happened. And so what that meant is that we had a lot of people looking, but not a lot of people transacting. So we could see the data on the website, but then that quite swiftly turned into a lot of people searching, but also a lot of people transacting. So it just showed the serious nature, and that levels up and down depending on the market, depending on interest rates, depending on Brightline tests, a whole bunch of economic factors. So that's sort of how we look at demand, and we temper that with the supply that comes in for houses. Okay, all right, that makes sense. I'll believe you. What was the biggest, learning from 2023 that you would take into 2024, especially from a data perspective? What I think is very interesting is that we have got some suppressed property buyers and sellers out there. So there is, I would say 2023 was the year of, if you had to transact, you did. Right. If you were could we look at it? If you didn't have to transact, I think those are the people that did not transact last year. So what I would say is, and looking at the last 2 months, because goodness, how are we at March? Almost on Friday. Frightening, yep. So, but looking at the first 2 months of this year, we are seeing really strong listing numbers. We are seeing Kiwis get back on the website. They are driving interest, they are driving more inquiries, they're saving a lot more properties than they have been. So I do think that 2023 taught us that there's quite a suppressed market in terms of the listings, and we're starting to see them flow through now. I wouldn't say it's a dam burst just yet. Yeah. I think there's a few economic factors that are holding that back, but absolutely I think we've got some transactions that need to happen, and they look like they're coming to market already. Good. I wonder how many people raided the deposit that they were saving last year just to travel.
and went, actually, we just need to do it. We've been cooped up for a few years, but also with a few things happening around the world, there's also that, actually, let's go now while we can and just make sure, and I do wonder how many deposits that might have been close. They just got raided, especially younger ones. Were there towns or cities that were sort of the biggest winners or losers in 2023 that stood out for you?
Yeah, so regional New Zealand this year looked like it was sort of the standouts. So the regions that were less affected by those new listing drops were Coromandel, Nelson Bays, Marlborough, Canterbury and Southland. So the strong in the South Island there, while they were still down, they were down less than 5%. But if we look at the losses, shall we say, Gisborne, new listings were down by 36%, and I probably would attribute that to some of the weather challenges that were in that region in the last year, which was a real challenge. And actually the biggest fall in prices was Auckland, back by 9.5%, and Wellington back 9%. And so that's really interesting, because typically when we see a shift, we do see the major centres go first, and then regional New Zealand kind of catches up a little bit afterwards. But the only thing I will say is that the one that continues to surprise me, that will just not play ball with any trend that is going across any other region in New Zealand, is Central Otago Lakes District. It just hit $1.6 million as an average last month. And I'm like, when is it going to stop?
Yeah. Brilliant. Some people who invested a few years ago will be smiling.
They'll have huge smiles. My goodness. And you think about that, because Auckland's sitting around 1.15 million. So there's almost 500,000 delta between that region and our biggest economic powerhouse, which is quite phenomenal, really.
Hugely. All right, get your crystal ball out, give it a polish. Now, I know it's nearly March, so you've already got some data, I'm sure. When we look forward at 2024 and coming out of summer now, how did January fare? Have we got off to a good start?
We have actually. We came out of the blocks hot, which was great, genuinely great to see. Now, that was a 10% increase in new listings coming onto the market this January when we compare it to last January, which again was a great... remembering that last January was the lowest January we've ever seen on record, but we're starting to get back to those, I'll call them in air marks there, normal levels. So normal levels is around 8,000 to 10,000 homes come onto the market, and we were sitting around that 9,500 for last month, which is, we're starting to get back to normal, which is a really nice piece. Average asking prices, a slight rise, nothing to be super concerned about, but it is really good to see that starting to move in the right direction as well. The total pool of homes available still around that 26,000 home mark. That's right across the Motu, right across New Zealand. So we've come out the blocks hot. February's already looking pretty strong. One of our strongest, we call it a user month, so that's users of our website are up really strong, but they're not only that big jump in people coming, but they're also inquiring with real estate agents, they're looking at property management, they are getting the saving properties, so it's really good to see them not only there and browsing, but also there transacting as well. So it's been a really good start to 2024.
And your predictions for the rest of the year?
I think we're going to see a very interesting year. Now, there have been some election promises that have come out very strongly. Now, what's going to happen with the investor market is a great question, I think. And we've got some interest around the Brightline test. Where will that net out? We've also got the interest deductibility. How is that going to fare, and when is that actually going to change? Is it going to do a phased rollout or phased roll-in, should I say? There is also the talk around the debt-to-income ratios, which are looking potentially around middle of the year. So there's a lot of chat about different areas. And what I will say is that over the past few years, there has been rules in place that have suppressed our investor market. So we have seen that there have been less investors in the market, and actually the first home buyers are kind of taken over. They've gone, right, well, if I'm not having to compete with an investor, I'll go and get myself a property, which again, wonderful. I think that's awesome to get people on the ladder. But now, how will that change? And I think that's going to be a very interesting It's going to be a very interesting piece, and how the debt to income ratios, because from what I've been reading about the debt to income, the people who will be hindered the most will be those who are looking to invest should they want to add to their portfolio. So I think that tussle between the Reserve Bank and what the legislation that comes in from the new government will be interesting. But I mean, it's been good. We've had some fantastic, few months of first home buyers getting onto the ladder, which I think is positive again.
That's great.
Yeah, it is really good.
Thanks for tuning in to our special episode, just looking back at some of our favourite interviews so far this year. We'll be back next week with our usual show. We will look forward to catching up with you then. Thanks, Adam, for editing this one together. Have a fabulous week. And remember, you can find all our previous episodes on Spotify or your favourite podcast site.